All right, good morning. My name is Dr. Michelle Baker, and since I am a K-12 principal, a high school principal in a large urban district, I understand what these kind of kerfluffles feel like all the time. So we're very used to bobbing and weaving. So while we were getting ready, the technology, of course, didn't work. So thank you again for your patience. But let's get started. Today, my reason for being on the call today is I just wanted to talk to you today about the perspective that I have of being a building high school principal and the role that applied behavior analysis has played for me in terms of my leadership. So, I will have you know that my entire presentation is entitled, Wow, I put that stuff on everything, because as a veteran leader, I've been in education for 31 years. The one degree I found that I just keep coming back to over and over again is my applied behavior analysis. And it's frankly setting up systems for adults for success for students. So today I want to be able to just share some techniques that I have done and used at my school that might work for you. Okay, so this slide talks about, frankly, why am I even here talking to you about applied behavior analysis? Who am I? I'm actually a recovering principal, and I say recovering because addicts keep going back to their drug of choice, whether it be food or something fun. I keep coming back to this idea of turnaround high school and education. And that's frankly how all of us feel right now in education. We just kind of keep going back to it and thinking we're going to get it right. Over my 31 years, I started out as a special ed teacher. And I went back after my special ed 4-year degree at Southern, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go back because you know what? Darn it, none of my kids really can behave well. So I went back and got my master's in behavior and special education. And then I got into the classroom again and thought, you know what? None of my kids really can read well. Maybe that's the problem. I went back to school and got my reading degree, thinking, all right, now I can fix the problem. This cycle of me going back to try and figure out the problem truly went on for my entire career over 31 years. It spanned me going back for my administrative certificate, becoming a director of special education, also becoming a high school vice principal. I did time as an elementary principal for a very long time because I thought I could change the reading scores, which we did a great job at. Then I went back at the district level to become what was called a coach, a principal's coach, a leadership director. But throughout that whole experience, I found myself, I just kind of kept changing my job to go back and try and fix the whole problem. And one of the things I realized was that the problem wasn't that I didn't have the skill set in terms of leading. I needed different structures. So I went away from becoming the special ed person and realized as I moved out and became a building leader, wow, I was making a lot more progress for my regular ed kids. So that being said, I'm always going to cheerlead the people who move in their career and go and try all the different positions. But please know I went from special education and now I'm on the regular ed side, and I'm using my applied behavior analysis degree well above and beyond my doctorate degree. It seems to be the one panaceic piece that has allowed me to make a lot of different changes that I think have led to a high school turnaround process. So let's start with, what the heck is turnaround in the state of Connecticut? Now, in the state of Connecticut, the nice part is this lends itself really easily for those of us who love the science of behavior. A commissioner's network turnaround in the vision of Connecticut was, hey, this office believes that if they provide the support and the technical assistance around talent, academics, culture, and climate, we're going to improve student outcomes. That's a big mouthful. And we all know that as principals because we live in the details of, okay, well, hey, Baker, how do I fix all of those specific things? So let me just talk to you about my year one. I had to write an application that said, listen, I walked into Wilby High School. which was considered a low performing large urban high school. We were just typical of any other large high school that was not performing well in all of the indicators. Well, the state said, listen, write a plan around talent. And if you're going to write a plan around talent, you're going to have to write something around the systems and the strategies that recruit, but also maintain the retention of teachers and leaders. Okay, that's not an easy task for anyone right now with the state that we're in terms of teacher shortages. The other component was, okay, Michelle, improve academics. And then the state outlines that as you need rigorous and aligned, engaging instruction. Again, that's a very large mouthful, but I'm going to show you how I utilized curriculum and data driven instruction to actually increase the rigor of our instruction here. The third part of the state turnaround is they ask you to change the climate and the culture. Now, this is where most of us leaders have lived. And we understand that climate and culture is so many different areas that allow for a shift. But I have some really exciting things to show you around how the climate and the culture in our school has shifted in the past 3 years, which is now moving the needle on our academics and ultimately making us able to retain the talent that's in our building. And the last piece was operations. Of course, the state says, listen, make sure you have systems that are in place that can actually make it so that schools are thriving. Now, when I say that, I laugh and say, okay, now, how would I go about and actually create a system that would change that for us here at Wilby? One of the things we're going to look at is in Wilby, we have something that's called our core values and belief system. I want to be able to hold on a second. I'm going to go back. 1, 2. Okay. I want you to take a look at this system of setup. So now the state comes to us and says, okay, you have a poor performing school in all of those areas of talent, academic, climate, and culture. What can you do, Michelle, to write a program that's going to show us that you can actually turn this school around? What we were able to do is say, we as Wilby High School have what we believe is our core values and mission. I'm going to have you hold on 1 second. So our mission in our school was to create better systems of support. Sorry, I think that this is going out of a different order, and I just want to be able to see the screen to show a different order. Okay, so yes, let's talk about turnaround. So really quickly, one of the things I had noticed was that, and bear with me, I'm thinking you can see my notes right now. So I'm going to go back into slideshow. All right. So for us at Wilby High School, we had to submit an application. So we were preparing for NEASC accreditation. And honestly, it allowed us to meet as a school community and ask my staff, what did they feel like was our real Achilles heel? So right now, we had to do what was unique about us was we started layering in these requirements of what we had to see as what is it that we need to be better at. Mhm. Sharing.
because I had to take it down.
Can
But
you?
I'll put it back.
Yep.
Mhm. But if you don't want them to see it, then
Okay, I'm so sorry for that technical difficulty. All right, so let's move forward. So of course you have my background. Now let's talk about what was going to be different about me thinking I could turn a school around. When we looked at the turnaround procedure, we had to write an application, frankly, to be ask the state to say we would like to be paired with you in order to turn our school around using what we think is research, scientific research based methods. The application was really tedious, but the nice part was we were able to come up with an entire process that we felt matched um, where we wanted our school to be. So our turnaround was about making this progress and this support happen for us as a school by creating different strategies. So I'm going to talk to you about the strategies. So in turnaround, there are indicators in turnaround that are about how we actually have to fix the different areas of what we're doing. Hold on one second. So when we look at who we are on these indicators, the slide that's not, unfortunately, it's not showing right now, is I wanted to show you there was three categories that we made staggering growth in as will be high school. What we were able to do was we were able to show 2 and 3 levels growth in the last 3 years on our different areas of academic instruction, recruitment of talent, and our climate and culture. That was something that, frankly, was really exciting to the State Department. For me in particular, when I walked in 3 years ago, I stopped and said, okay, wait a minute. I need to look at exactly where we were and write plans around it. And the first thing that came to mind to me was that Susan Markle. You got to design your environment for behavioral success, right? So every strategy I was choosing in the area of talent and academics, I had to choose an actual strategy that was either solutions antecedents based, like building awareness, or I had to build solutions that were consequence based, that were more about giving feedback and reinforcement. So in a slide that I have that I promise I'm going to be able to share with you shortly, it shows you that the first year we started this process in 2021, we were pretty much all in the red, which is considering below performing, not even in the area of developing. So we were red in almost all areas. By year two, you're going to see in the next slide where we start growing in all of those areas to twos and threes. And lastly, last school year, by building in different ways of reinforcing different behaviors, we actually started to move into the threes and the fours. And what I want to share with you today is specifically, okay, what did we do in the area of talent? What did we do in the area of academics? And then what did we do in the area of school environment that actually could show how we turned the school around? So when I came 3 years ago, one of the common jokes we talk about was we literally walked in the hallways, the bell rang, and 27 minutes after the bell rang, we literally had full hallways. Not only were the hallways full and students not going to class in a timely manner, we had students who were wildly undercredited. I'm not saying that everybody's perfectly back up to normal, but I can tell you in terms of credits, we have more of our kids on track and the hallways look actually pristine. The one of the techniques when I went back old school and started to think about what do I need to show was I wanted to talk about, here's the slide. These are the ratings. When I talk about those different kinds of ratings, you can see here in the year 23, we began to start to hit these threes and some fours. We're actually currently going to be undergoing an audit in the next couple of weeks. And our goal is to bring our talent and our academic and our school culture all up to threes and fours. So we're actually very much looking forward to this process. So when I had to sit down and write the plan, I had recently received my doctorate degree, which I thought, okay, I got my doctorate. I know exactly how I'm going to do this. But nearing the end of my doctorate, I started taking the ABA courses. I took applied behavior analysis. And I have to tell you, the most meaningful courses I was taking was in this program because I started to see the marriage between setting up the school environment so that kids could be successful, but continuing to train my staff. So when the OBM, organizational behavior management, came up in my applied behavior analysis classes, I thought, wow, this is that panaceic bullet for me in terms of I'm going to create strategies around this. And it talks about you have to create structures of feedback and reinforcement. Those were going to be my drivers around talent, rigor, and climate and culture. But I first had to look at, okay, what are my critical behaviors? Grab some baseline and start developing my strategies that will help me facilitate the change and actually improve those processes so that I have some data to look at. Ultimately, my goal was to retain employees. 3 years ago, we were down 31 staff members. There was a mass exodus, and most of us know about turnaround schools. A lot of staff do leave. A year after that, we opened the building with 16 vacancies, which to us was far better. And I will tell you, this year, we're actually almost at completely filled. And the year ago's teachers who started are actually all with us still this year. So this idea of creating a professional learning environment for us to teach around was going to be something that we knew was going to be the key to our success. So We had to build in professional learning cycles. So here is the key to what ABA was able to help me align so that I could start making some changes. I'm going to share with you the professional learning cycle, and then I'm going to show you 3 areas where we've actually had growth because of using this professional learning cycle continually, checking fidelity, monitoring data, and how that's changed our talent, our academics, and our climate and culture. So initially, we had to identify in each of those areas what I was going to professionally develop my staff on. We're fortunate here that we have every Wednesday as a half a day. We commit as a whole faculty to sitting every Wednesday and having honest conversations about whatever we have decided is our professional development topic. When we pick our PD topic, we are really good at creating operational definitions. And I'm going to show you some of those areas we operationally defined. We applied, okay, once we've defined that behavior that we want to talk about, we started to apply different research strategies where we did a lot of antecedent setup for success. Once that staff was trained every Wednesday as a whole, we started to talk to them about after every Wednesday whole group training, we started to train our department heads weekly. So those department heads got training in fidelity checks and walkthroughs. And they had a lot of individual time with the administrative team to begin to act as coaches in all 3 of those areas, the academics and the climate and culture, and for our talent. And then lastly, we created a system where there's daily walkthroughs. So now the department heads and the administrators are walking through in classrooms, and we're giving feedback and on the spot coaching to our teachers in those areas. And I'm going to go through each of the 3 areas with you today to show you some ways we found success using this professional learning cycle that is linked to the organizational behavioral management piece in applied behavior analysis. So the first area that we professionally developed tremendously in was the area of academics. According to the State Department, they ask that we actually increase academic rigor, and they also ask us to increase student engagement, supports for our special populations, and they ask us to create systems that are assessment systems and our data culture. Those are heavy, heavy, heavy lifts for any building leader. But by building in this process of training on Wednesdays as a whole faculty, and then training the department heads to go in and act as coaches, and then layering into these daily walks, we were able to gain tremendous traction. So let me share with you what we did around academic rigor specifically. In the area of academic rigor, we were very fortunate that we had a consultant with a deeply laden special ed background, like most of us. And I'm imagining a lot of you on the call today have special ed background and have this leadership understanding of how to try and set up these systems. So globally, we looked at the way instruction was taught in our school, and it was not rigorous, flat out. And what we were missing was some really basic components. And I called that tier 1 instructional practices. This consultant was able to outline 6 tier 1 instructional practices for our school. Very simple things like learning targets and success criterias, challenging instruction, student engagement, depth of knowledge questioning. These are very overarching, simplistic topics that we actually weren't hitting the mark on. And frankly, there was too much variability in all the classrooms, the way each of those different topics was being taught. Our first step was we created this process of professional learning around our consultant, Dave Cormier, his essential tier 1 practices. He professionally developed with the administrative team in our school these 6 topics all year long. We went back to the drawing board. We talked about what does it look like to have good learning targets and success criteria? How do you write good learning targets and success criteria?
If you are interested in using this presentation for CEUs, please get ready to write down the first passcode. The first passcode is 561074.
Once we had a common agreement amongst the staff, Dr. Cormier put together a flip chart so that it was a quick look for teachers on these 6 areas. And then he also gave the teachers a manual so that they could read further into each of these practices. So now they were getting weekly instruction and they had tangibles that they can use as resources. Once teachers felt comfortable in this professional learning on these 6 topics, we came together collectively and created what was called our walkthrough tool. This walkthrough tool allowed now for teachers to be successful because they operationally defined each of those 6 topics. So when we talked about student engagement, and I'll show you very specifically, we gave to the teachers, what does good student engagement look like? It looks like the student that is engaged, the teachers that are engaged, the alignment with the activities. Once we had that shared understanding, we created this classroom visit tool. This tool was the one agreed tool that we as a staff, the department heads and the admin team said, okay, we'll do coaching cycles. These are non-evaluative. They do not go in teachers' evaluations, and they're specifically around all of us getting better. Over the past 3 years, turnaround schools typically incur a lot of new staff and they're young teachers. And we all know, I think I should write an apology letter to the first 2 years of maybe 3 years of students that I had, because as we're getting our feet wet and learning our craft, it's a difficult time for us. But having these set of resources that were aligned materials, in addition to professional learning weekly as their teams and departments, having department heads coach them, and then having administrative walkthroughs that were really coaching sessions, teachers started to say, oh my God, thank you. Will you come in and will you walk through this with me? I feel like I need to do a better job at this section. Can you come in during that section and coach me during that? We've created an environment now where the teachers are comfortable with literally on the spot coaching. Again, because we took it out of the evaluation cycle, we broached it as science of actual teaching and saying, listen, these are fidelity checks. Let's look at our craft again. So using the tools that Dr. Cormier set out and then applying a process of professional learning that was a cycle, an ever moving, non-evaluative coaching cycle, teachers really begin to buy in by saying, I think I do a great job at the opening. Why don't you come see that? And I'll go help a teacher who needs help with closing because I want to do better at that. So this process of tangibles that was created by our consultant, by wrapping around that professional learning cycle, we started to gain a lot of traction. So let's just look at this tool that was created by the consultant. Now, again, we're one high school trying this in a school system of 32 schools. But at this high school in particular, where I am, we said, let's identify our core practices. We can agree that in this walkthrough, we're going to look for what does our learning environment look like? What should a learning target be? How can we ask for those learning targets to be written student friendly? We talked about agendas. How do we show kids what our 90-minute block is? And just so you know, we have an A-B cycle, and it's a 90-minute block, 4 periods, 4 blocks per day. So we looked at the agenda. What do the warm-ups look like? So that whole process of outlining depth of knowledge questioning, engaging instruction, what does our academic discourse look like? What are the deeper thinking questions? Differentiation in our groups and formative check-in. These areas operationally defined by us collectively, as a staff, a teaching staff and an administrative staff and a coaching staff with our department heads, agreed upon each of these areas. And by creating these operational definitions, teachers had a deeper understanding of how they can write lessons better to hit these points. We use this tool when we go in the classrooms, and the department heads use the tool. We will not only give feedback in writing or verbally, sometimes we'll just stop and do coaching with staff. That for us was a huge win in looking at high quality instruction. We all know the greatest barrier to school improvement is a lack of agreed upon definition of what is high quality instruction. By using this tool, we were able to say we agree that these are what we agree is going to get us high quality instruction. So these operational definitions were easy for teachers to read. They were easy for students to understand. And we had decided using this tool, now we were going to start this coaching series. Out of that coaching series, every Wednesday, us learning together as a staff, our weekly department heads, they train with the admin team, do walkthroughs. And now my department heads are not administrators, they're collegial, which I think has been a huge win for us, feeling having our staff feel really warmly about taking on the coaching. And we as administrators said, listen, it's not evaluative. Us going in and saying, let's use this as making you be the best version of yourself, led to our teachers saying, okay, well, now that we have this walkthrough tool, how do we lesson plan? Shouldn't we lesson plan in an operationally definitive way that aligns with the walkthrough tool? Now, year 2 was born an actual operational defined lesson plan template that's used throughout the school. And I want you to see the components that are in this lesson plan too. Our teachers lesson plan every 2 weeks. They submit an at a week's glance. And what you'll notice is their learning targets are in there. So they have to plan the day, what their learning targets are, plan out their do now, tell us what their challenging learning activities are going to look like. They'll write the deeper thinking questions so that we can listen for those questions. And then they write in what the formative checks are for them. So now there's not only this alignment, the through line of the framework, those elements are given during that instructional block. There's also an alignment and a progression through multiple days. So now we can see clearly here, using a lesson planning template that aligns with a walkthrough template, everything is operationally defined for success around that academic rigor. Where we are now in this process is we are collecting data now that talks about how frequently are we seeing our learning targets met. We also take data on all 6 of these areas to see, are we seeing these areas hit? We look at the data every month and say, let's go back and do professional learning around the areas that we know we need support on. So this is a whole year's learning topic for this professional staff. Every Wednesday from 12 o'clock to 2 or 3, we meet and actually continually look at this framework from the lesson plan tools and how it exactly related to these walkthrough pieces and the operational definitions and whether or not they're being met. So for us in the area of academic rigor, we can see that hitting rigor and student engagement now is being met through our lesson planning. The supports for our special populations are again met when we look at that lesson plan and say, how are we meeting the needs of students who might not be catching up throughout the lesson? What are our data checks look for? And then lastly, we've ultimately created an assessment system and a data culture that talks about, we look at all of those components weekly and monthly to see if we can move this needle. I'm excited to say that over the past 2 years, we've grown, and I'm really looking forward to this year's audit in 2 weeks because we'll be able to see the benefits of this walkthrough tool in addition to the benefits of the alignment that's been created using this lesson plan template. So much success in this area through the operational definitions, and I'm going to go back to touting ABA on this one, was constant fidelity checks. So that was academic rigor. Let's talk about the climate and the culture. Again, a large mouthful. According to the State Department, that means what is the difference in your school environment, your student attendance, your student behavior, and your family engagement. All major things. So let me tell you how we broke it down. First and foremost, we broke down the behavior component by saying, listen, we as a school district and all school districts in the state of Connecticut, high schools, are creating what's called a portrait of a graduate definition. Our portrait of a graduate definition was we as a staff sat down and said, okay, what do we think our kids, when they leave here in 4 years, what qualities should they have that we can say, based on their 4 years with us, this is what they walked out with? And these were the 6 areas that we said will be high school students should walk out with. They should be collaborators, communicators, contributors. They should be socially and emotionally intelligent. They should be critical thinkers, and they should be self-directed. Fortunate for us, that came out to a beautiful CATS model because we are the Wildcats. But the nice part was the start to that was here we went again, creating operational definitions around a common understanding of these 6 indicators for our climate and culture. We decided, okay, now those 6 components should be met in all areas of our school. So we took it one step further. Again, we outlined these expectations and said, in a classroom, what's the definition of a respectful communicator? That respectful communicator now meets the definition of someone who's listening, speaking, and valuing perspectives. We went a step further and said, let's use student-friendly guidelines. If we're going to operationally define for ourselves fidelity checks, let's operationally define for our students what are the guidelines. So now our kids know that means entering the classroom with a quiet voice. It means that we're actually an active listener during the class time. We're respecting the opinions and the ideas of other students. It means following the cell phone guidelines. And that's a big mouthful for all of us as leaders. We're struggling with the social media component. But you can see here how we've done this natural progression of identifying a problem, allowing for us to create a common understanding around certain indicators, operationally defining these indicators, and then putting them into the places that we see those expectations needing to be monitored. All right. Now, using that specifically, what we were able to do was our data right now for behavior. Let's just talk about ISS and OSS offenses. My blue bars here are showing you last school year's data. Our skipping data was we were administering administrative offenses of ISS and OSS at the rate of 340 last year to date, where we're at 103 this year. Our skipping has decreased tremendously because we've created operational ways around monitoring our tardiness. You can see tardiness went down. You also see that we're down in major areas of insubordination, disorderly conduct, failure to attend ISS, fighting, physical aggression. For us as a school, those were staggering wins that we just couldn't be more excited about. Let's look at our OSS data. Our out of school suspensions have dropped drastically in all areas. Level 1 offenses are skipping. Level 4 offenses in the area of fighting and aggression in disorderly conduct We're seeing a drop in our out of school suspensions because we have created systems in our school for our teachers that ultimately impact our students' success. I want to show you our level 4 offenses. This is a major thing. You guys know if you were a building principal or a leader 3 years ago, when we came back from COVID, teaching literal skills of walking in the hallways again, speaking to each other appropriately, not bringing back what was on social media the night before to the next day, and it resulting in violent behavior. There was something we called the Will Be Fights page. Kids were posting videos of fights daily where you can see myself and my staff involved in. In the last 2 years, look at the level 4 offenses drops. Drugs and alcohol, that's vaping. If you're a principal, you're a recovering addict like me, because we just keep going back to the drawing board on helping our kids not self-medicate. Fighting and altercations, physical aggression, insubordination. Look at this. Creating common expectations in the classroom and having school-wide honored expectations. Kids knew what counted as insubordination. They knew what disrespect looked like, so we could teach it. Disorderly conduct, battery and assault, serious disorderly conduct. These numbers are dropping in droves. And just so you know, the blue is last year at this time. The green is this year right now at this time. It's year-to-date information. But the reason I'm showing you that is not because I want to say, oh, yay, rah, rah, will be. I want to say that using applied behavior analysis, which frankly, I went to school for every degree under the sun, much to my husband's dismay in terms of paying for it. The degree that yielded me my benefits was creating cycles of professional learning around creating operational definitions. So right now, my students understand these 6 wildcats expectations are outlined for them and now are ultimately showing major success for us. Let me tell you just about another win that we had around student absenteeism. Fellow principals, I don't know about you guys, but I put my head on my pillow at night, exhausted, thinking about how to get kids to come to school. Thank you, COVID, yet once again. I had to look at how can we create systems of professional learning and support for my adults that they could create systems that students will want to come to school. That is a very heavy lift, not just for kids. Let's talk about the adults creating these processes. It's exhausting. We experience compassion fatigue. We experience all the normal human emotions of being exhausted through this process. But I want to show you something we did that I thought was meaningful for us as a staff. Last year, we were at 70% chronic absence. That means 70% of our kids were missing 20% or more of school. That's staggering. We ended last school year at 40%. Now, I know all of us got big wins after COVID, but we will be incurred 40% growth. Our goal for this year, just so you know, is to go from 40 to 20. I'm still hovering in 30s, high 30s. Today I was at 38%. Here you could see I was at 43 when I put the data in. We're not winning every day, but I'm going to tell you where I'm hitting. This area of severe and chronic absence, kids, high schoolers, we know there is a habitual pattern that has been happening since elementary, middle, and high. Some of these behaviors are not fixable. They're generational, and they're things that are school phobia and things that are so deeply entrenched, we may not be able to fix them. Here's where we fixed our attention. We fixed our attention on the moderate to chronic. That moderate number, if these 391 kids could fall back into at risk, we could reduce this overall severe number down to this 12%. We may not gain traction with these kids. These are our kids who are coming in frequently. There are 10%ers. These are the kids we had to create systems of support in school all day and every day. So here's what we did at Wilby for them. We built into our commissioner's network plan 3 attendance counselors. so that there were human beings for these kids to talk to, and we incentivized them coming to school 5 days in a row at a clip. Let me show you some of the self-monitoring. Again, an ABA tool, not something I learned in my leadership program. We used Attendance Works is amazing. If you use them and Google them, I know, shout out to them. I see the cheers. They are fantastic with giving us leaders stuff that's already made and we could put our names on. One of the ABA tools we started to use here was self-monitoring. We know at the high school level, kids need to develop their own strategies. So using these attendance counselors, they were able to identify the small groups by using this data culture. We have this data is available to all of the attendance counselors daily. They meet with small groups of students and they use the attendance success plan. And you want to know what a lot of our kids said? Our kids were like, no, Dr. Baker, I'm not out that much. I never missed that much school. That wasn't me. We were amazed. But when we started to incorporate the family plan, we said to parents, listen, so-and-so's not able to make the bus. Who can they call when they can't hit that bus? We developed tiers of support. And then frankly, every 5 days that you come, we have some sort of a hot cocoa fest, some sort of an inbuilt session here at school where they can come down, briefly miss maybe 15 or 20 minutes of class, because we know that's the struggle. We don't want them out of class. They briefly miss that, and then they are now falling off of that list and gaining that success.
If you are interested in using this presentation for CEUs, please get ready to write down the second passcode. The second passcode is 839512.
So me doing that was, just showing you these are huge, heavy lifts. And I know that because I've lived it and haven't slept in 3 years. So fellow principals, my love to you guys, because this work has incorporated all 31 years that I have been an educator, every tool that I've learned. But here's the ultimate panaceic bullet in closing. In closing was the major success around, yes, the students are performing better, was my teachers feel better. I was able to retain 99% of my staff from last year to this year. And I'm going to tell you why. This professional learning cycle allowed me as an administrator to be able to breathe a little around leaning into the process of coaching. And that coaching comes with a lot of love. That might not be under, the ABA vernacular, but let me tell you what it led. It led to my teachers being able to trust a process. They knew what was expected, and it allowed me and my admins and my DH a lot of time to go in and say to the teachers, thank you. You're doing great on this piece, and I'm proud of you. We've moved away from that in the last 3 years after COVID because everyone's so tired. So my final note to you around applied behavior analysis, frankly, being my favorite degree, but don't tell my husband because he had to pay for the doctorate, the applied behavior analysis. And if I could ever pass the BCBA exam, I'm still working towards that. I'm only human. It's allowed me to say, listen, we've got to put all these pieces together, but wrap it up in a lot of love and wrap it up in support and wrap it up in the wins that our teachers need to hear, and slow down as a leader. Thank yourself some days, grant yourself some grace, love on your admin team, love on your teachers, ask them how their kids are and ask them how their hearts are feeling. And I promise you, the tools that I just showed you do the work for you. But we're all exhausted, and this is a race that is going to be hard for us. So please lean into this process. Thank you for the work that you do. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but kudos to the work that you do, and have a great rest of your session. It was really a pleasure speaking to you today. I hope you all have a great Friday and enjoy your weekends.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baker. That was a wonderful presentation full of very informative practices that you have been working on with ABA in your school. Thank you. We appreciate you being here.